and a good Friday afternoon or morning. Good Friday morning to you, everyone. Thanks for joining for this tropical update. It is presented by our newest partner, Paul Davis Restoration of Baton Rouge. Certainly give them a like on their Facebook page, visit their website, give them a call if you do need any assistance, and tell them Gulf Coast Updates sent you. So we do appreciate our new partner, Paul Davis Restoration of Baton Rouge. So thank you all again for following the page and following along what we've been tracking Ida, and we're going to continue to track Ida for the rest of today and tomorrow. And Sunday is the the big day. So let's see what's going to happen with this one as we move forward. So from last night until today, we really haven't seen too much change in really the forecast for Ida. We maybe saw a slight shift left, to the west a little bit. And again, that's very common, where it is right now. I still think as it goes over Cuba, we might still see some sort of, shift a little bit. But the bottom line remains that we are expecting a pretty sizable hurricane along the Gulf Coast to be making landfall, most likely along the Louisiana coast somewhere, whether it's going to be to the east or the west. We'll fine-tune those details as we get a little bit closer, but right now we're expecting a pretty significant landfall somewhere along the, most likely along the Louisiana coastline. What I'm seeing on satellite, and you've been following me from the page, y'all know by now I like to post my own opinion on these things, and what I'm seeing on satellite. Hold on a second, let me get something. Let's drop that. Okay. What I'm seeing on satellite, some of the trends, and y'all know by now that I go against sometimes what the National Hurricane Center even thinks. If I see something that maybe they're not forecasting, I'll tell you guys up front about that. What I'm seeing right now on the satellite, and I told y'all earlier in the page this morning that I thought that this is probably going to make a run at hurricane before it even got to Cuba. That's not what was forecasted. It is now. Now the National Hurricane Center is thinking that this will get to hurricane strength before reaching the Cuban west coastline there. One of the things I was seeing that I was not seeing last night is a consolidation of storms around the center of circulation. And now even on infrared, we can clearly pick out where that center probably is, somewhere around here, right? We're seeing the big bubbling of convection around that center of circulation, and now we're seeing it pop around where the low-level center is. And that's always most important with these storms. If we're going to see strengthening, we got to see storms wrapping around the center, and we are seeing that now, unfortunately. It's kind of already overachieving a little bit, and that's really not what I wanted to see here. I really wanted to see this thing stay pretty weak before it got to Cuba, but of course the possibility was there that as it went through these warm waters here, and now that shear is kind of decreasing a bit, that the potential was there that it could strengthen. So it looks like it is going to get to hurricane strength. It's at 65 right now, so it has a little land here that's going to go over. We'll see if that affects it a little bit, but it only has to go 10 miles per hour to get to Category 1 strength. So last night we were talking about, a couple. Y'all said something about someone saying that someone was backing off intensity and that a 1 or a 2 was expected, and I told y'all that's nonsense. Don't let's not become complacent with this storm, because there's from what I'm seeing, there's nothing that's going to stop this thing from really intensifying quickly once it gets into the Gulf. So last night they were forecasting 110. I told you that was 1 mile per hour below 3. This is going to get to a 3. That's the likelihood I thought that was going to happen. Now, of course, the National Hurricane Center says this morning it was 115. Well, they bumped it up now to 120 at landfall. So let's take a look here at the latest cone. This is the latest cone now from 10 a.m. And let's zoom in a little bit here on the track that's going to be closest to the coast. And this is that time right there, right? So they put it. Remember, that's Sunday, August 29th at 7 p.m. right there on the coast, and that's 7 p.m. So the timing keeps changing a little bit. Like I said yesterday, prepare for it right now as if it's going to come in the early afternoon, although it could be the evening. But remember, just because that's where the center point is, I want to stress that big time here. This is where the center point could be at this point at 7 p.m. But the bands that was from last night, kind of the same thing, right? Remember, if the center is located here, you have bands that are going to be moving in here well before that, that center moving in at 7 p.m. So things are going to be going, coming inbound starting in the morning on Sunday, I would think, and then those bands are going to stay over the area for the entirety of the day, which becomes the the flooding issue that I'll talk about in just a second. So it's possible around 7 p.m. we have a 120 mile per hour storm here. The National Hurricane Center puts the gust up to about 150. That is significant. And if you followed me for the page there, on the page, I did just post that I really think we should all prepare for at least a Category 4 here. 130 or above is Category 4. They're forecasting 120 at this point, but I wouldn't say, I don't know if I'll say it's likely right now it becomes a Category 4, but I got to be honest, if somebody told me, make your prediction right now, I would say this is going to at least get up to a Category 4 once it gets into the Gulf. I just don't know what's going to stop it. Look, I hope I'm missing something, and I really do hope I'm wrong here and that there's some element that I'm missing here in the Gulf, but it's going to be going into the Gulf with low wind shear. And the other thing that concerns me is the track that it's going to be going into, obviously crossing the western coast of Cuba there and moving into this loop current, right, is where you have, this just an enormous amount of energy there and deep warm water for this thing to tap into. So you combine that with low wind shear and the warm water that it's going to come into, and the fact that it's not going to be moving very fast, right? It's an average speed. It's the perfect speed for this thing to strengthen. I really think at some point we're going to see this thing turn into that classic buzzsaw look, and at that point, steady strengthening all the way to the coast, probably a period of rapid strengthening that happens, and that's when I think that we probably get to Category 4 with this. Again, I could be wrong about that, but I think you really need to make preparations right now as if we're going to be dealing with at least a Category 4 hurricane. So I don't say that I don't say that lightly, and I don't just say that like, this just came up, I think I'll just say that. No, it's something I think hard about, and wouldn't say that unless I thought that that was a real possibility. So keep that in mind. Don't be surprised by that if it happens, and I don't want it to happen, but I just think we're looking at the real possibility that it will. So with that said, so here's the cone now, okay? So I think it shifted a little bit west last night. And again, look, this is going to matter big time, close to the coast here as far as where the storm actually ends up coming in. It's going to matter most to the coastline, right? Because they're going to bear the brunt down here close to the coast, and the surge will obviously be impacted with where the center comes on. But I do want to stress to you here, if you're going to be east of where the center comes in, and really even to the west a little bit here, you're going to feel impacts from the system. This is not going to be one of those heavily leaning east storms where the west side gets nothing. That's not going to be this. This is going to be a classic storm that's well developed, and it's going to have impacts on each side. Although the east will be worse still, the impacts will be felt on both sides. So as we move forward here, they haven't come out with those projections for power outages, but I would assume this entire, well, maybe not that far, but like around where that center is going to be moving in, right, in this area. And I'm not saying everyone in this area is going to lose power, but there's going to be widespread power outages in this area as the winds come in and move to the north there. In addition, there's going to be several inches of rainfall falling as well. So, keep that in mind here. This is west of Metro New Orleans, and a lot of folks on the page are from Louisiana, from the New Orleans area, from the North Shore, been asking me questions from Baton Rouge. I know y'all are concerned. I know you have questions about this, but remember, this could be a Cat 4 here, close to the coast, and then it moves north here, and potentially there right through Baton Rouge, and at that point, it could still have winds of 70 miles per hour, gusting to 85. So those winds are still going to probably be potent a little bit as it moves to the north here through Baton Rouge area. So there is the possibility to see some power outages even inland as this thing moves in. So the thing we're worried about first and foremost is, of course, the storm surge potential with a potential category. I'd say at least a Category 3, maybe a Cat 4 here on the coast. You're going to have several feet of storm surge on the right side of the storm. You're going to have the winds, of course, to deal with, and then you're going to have the rainfall as well. It's going to start early in the day and continue as we go throughout the day, and those totals are going to be adding up a bit. So not going to be a pleasant experience with this, right? It's not going to be something that happens fast, because I think afterwards there's going to be some issues to deal with. Power outages are one of them, and we're going to have to track the rainfall amounts that are going to be coming in. We're going to have to track the river levels as the rain keeps falling, and then it goes to the north. It's going to continue to drop up there, and those totals come down through those rivers all have to go back out, right? So lots of different things we have to continue tracking here. So unfortunately, from yesterday to today, there's still no good news really with this. I'm trying to get any kind of encouragement here. But, it becomes, as it shifts back and forth a little bit, obviously it becomes a little bit better news for some folks, but then worse news for others. So I try to convey the information best to you, and I'll never say it's good news that it shifted away, because that becomes worse news for someone else. So this is where the center of circulation is, and I also want to tell you that the cone still does extend, by the way, east here through Plaquemines Parish there, and then through over here to Biloxi. The Mobile area and like the Florida Panhandle doesn't look like you'll get a direct hit from this. But with that said, if you do get a track that goes more to the east along the eastern side of this cone, remember, you're going to have a lot of mess moving in east of this system still, so you will feel impacts from this. Now, you're not going to get devastating impacts from it, but you're absolutely going to see impacts from this storm. Now going westbound here, okay? Now Lake Charles, Lafayette, y'all are still in it as well. And in fact, in the last day or so, the trends have been more trending that way a little bit. So as this thing goes over Cuba, we still have the potential for a center relocation maybe, and maybe some disruption there that could adjust tracks a little bit. So if you're over there in Lake Charles, you're on the cusp there. You're on the very left side of the cone, but you're still in it, and you need to pay attention to this, because this storm still does have the potential to shift in that direction, okay? And Lafayette, Acadiana, all that area still needs to pay attention, because even on this center track, you're still going to be impacted a little bit with it. There is the potential there west of the system, because this storm is going to be a full, blown hurricane here, that we could see power outages over there toward Acadiana. So keep that in mind. All right, this is going to be a pretty big storm. And just to give you kind of an idea, I show that right here. This is I don't show this to scare you. I show this because this is what the model is indicating. Okay, this is. Let me see if we have the new one coming in yet. That's 43 hours worth. Okay, that's as far out as we can go right there. But if you go back to the the model there this is the 6 a.m. one. I mean, you see what happens as it gets to the Gulf right here. And this is the time period right here, right? So this is tomorrow afternoon, which, by the way, as far as evacuations go, again, I can't make the call for you, but I can tell you my own decision will be made probably tomorrow at some point as this gets into the Gulf. We're going to know if this thing's going to start exploding tomorrow in the afternoon and evening time. It's probably going to happen as we go through the day tomorrow. It's going to be right here by tomorrow night. By tropics after dark tomorrow night, we could have a full blown hurricane in our hands. And then you look as it continues to expand there as we get close to the coast, right? It continues to possibly strengthen all the way to landfall, which makes these things that much worse, honestly. But it's big there, right? It's big potentially at landfall. That's what we could be looking at. Might not be exact, but that's what we could be looking at once we get to landfall there, and that's, again, Sunday evening around 7 p.m. there. So you see how it stretches out there, and a lot of folks even to the east. So notice the banding there, by the way, east of the area. So even if it comes in, by the way, I know a lot of folks watch from Mobile, Pensacola, all those areas over there, Mississippi, Gulf Coast. Even if the center is somewhere around where the National Hurricane Center is, remember, you have the banding that comes in over here, and even the long stretching tail on this side too. You can have these rain bands moving in. You have the potential for those isolated tornadoes on that side as well. You still do have some push of water. This is a big storm, y'all. This is not a small storm that's going to be disorganized. This is a strong storm. Remember with, again, I'm not saying it's going to be Katrina, but remember with Katrina when it made landfall, I think Mobile, if I remember right, downtown Mobile had like a lot of flooding happening around that area. So these things can stretch just because you're not in the center of circulation. The impacts can be, felt way outside of it. And that's something that the National Hurricane Center stresses in their discussion. They say, although the small spread and the guidance through landfall increases the overall confidence in the track forecast, folks along the coast are reminded not to focus on the exact details of the forecast track, because storm surge, wind, and rainfall impacts will extend far out from where the center of circulation is. So keep that in mind. Don't always just focus on the on where the center line is going to go, because with a storm like this, we have the potential of seeing pretty significant impacts even outside of where the center is going to make landfall. All right, so here's a look at some of the key points from the National Hurricane Center at 10 a.m. here. We know a lot of this. Life-threatening storm surge and conditions are expected along Cuba. That's first and foremost. Then, after that, number 2, the risk of life-threatening storm surge inundation increasing along the coast of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Inundation of 7 to 11 feet above ground level is going to be possible within the area from Morgan City to Ocean Springs, Mississippi, including Lake Bourne. Interest in these areas should follow any advice given by local officials. So basically, if they tell you to get out, you probably should consider doing it if you can. It's expected to be a dangerous major hurricane. When it reaches the northern Gulf Coast, that's at least a Category 3. And, the risk of hurricane-force winds is increasing, especially from the Louisiana coast, including Metro New Orleans. Potentially devastating wind damage could occur where the core of Ida moves onshore. That's going to be near the center of circulation, especially closer to the coast there. Then the rainfall threat. It's likely to produce heavy rainfall Sunday into Monday. It's going to cross the central Gulf Coast. That's from southeast Louisiana, coastal Mississippi, and over to coastal over Alabama as well, and the lower Mississippi Valley as this thing moves to the north. Just like I was mentioning just now, it's going to drop a lot of rain. It's going to drop a lot of rain at landfall. It's going to drop a lot of rain as it goes north, and that stuff's going to come down here. So it could result in flash, urban, small stream, and even the river flooding potential. So a lot of hazards coming with this system. And by the way, this is the National Hurricane Center cone as of 10 a.m. You see there, the pink areas, those are all hurricane watches. Those are likely to get up to hurricane warnings later tonight, I would think, or maybe by this afternoon. And then the yellow there is tropical storm watch over in Alabama area. That is going to be probably a tropical storm warning later tonight. So don't be surprised if you get those updated to warnings and you get some stuff on your phone, maybe scaring you a little bit, but that's what it's going to be. All right, so this is from this is a graphic that Peyton Malone shared. He's from WWL. I'm going to use it because I like it. Thank you. I'll give him credit, though, for posting it. This is a peak wind forecast. Again, that's assuming that would have been the center right there. Remember, these winds are kind of dependent on that. And this was also a little bit old. This was from the 4 a.m. advisory. So, but let me just tell you, this is going to be, this is kind of a good guide as far as who could see the winds. Now, remember, these are wind gusts. If this is stronger, then this was when it was forecast to be like 120, or no, I'm sorry, this is when it was forecast to be like 110 or 115, so the gust close to the coast would have been 120 plus. If this bumps up, then obviously these numbers go up, but it gives you the idea here where the center comes in. Those light purple areas there are expecting those would be the worst of the winds, and that kind of still would stand sort of right now with the current center of circulation. Obviously these can adjust left and right a little bit, but you get the idea. You see the red areas there, that would include like Kenner, Metairie, Laplace, Reserve, all these areas there, even toward maybe, notice around Baton Rouge, by the way, the gust potential comes very close to you there to be 100 to 110, and then at least 80 to 90 mile per hour gusts. I mean, these are enough to cause some power outages, okay? And then you see North Shore folks. I know some folks were asking about wind speed potential up there. Look, you have the potential to see close to hurricane force gusts, okay, in that area. And here's another thing that's going to concern me a little bit, okay, and this sometimes is not talked about, but I did want to mention it to you because I saw this with a few storms in the past. When you get these storms coming in like this, and I'll talk about some of the slowdown that I'm expecting too. When you get the storm coming in with this trajectory right here, and I'll kind of just explain what I'm talking about. Anytime these storms are moving south of this high and it starts to make that turn, it's like a car, right? You put on your blinker, you start to slow down, and you make that turn to the right. It's kind of the same things with these storms, okay? When this thing is starting, it looks like, unfortunately, at landfall is when we start to get that bend from northwest to north. And so when that's happening, it looks like there'll be a slowdown that happens at landfall. And so with that, we're going to have a lot of rainfall dropping, okay? And so what we get with that is prior to the storm coming in, when the center's somewhere down here, there had already been quite a few bands that have moved into this area prior to the storm making landfall, okay? And so what that's doing is it's saturating the ground a lot. So when these winds come through, you have the potential to see downed power lines and trees falling, where normally it wouldn't happen, but because the ground is so soupy at that point and the rain is already falling, well, then you have that, the trees and the power lines and anything that's in the ground that's usually staked pretty sturdy, it's not so sturdy anymore because of what the rain's doing before the winds are coming in. And that has always been a problem, is when you get a lot of rain before strong winds come in. We saw that there was a storm around Baton Rouge in 2011. This storm wasn't even that strong. It was Lee, Tropical Storm Lee. Y'all might remember that one. This was not a strong storm. This was a weak tropical storm, but we got so much rain for it in Baton Rouge. But then even when just tropical storm winds came through, it knocked down a bunch of stuff. I mean, trees, power lines, and we had some issues just from that. So that's always something to talk about. And I don't like the slowdown that we're going to be seeing at landfall either because of that bend that's going to be happening, because it's going to be rounding the edge of that high pressure. And when that happens, these things usually slow down. It happens every time. So don't be surprised when you see a slowdown happen close to landfall there, and that's where those rainfall numbers come in and become very concerning. This is a look here at the, let me reload, make sure there's nothing new. Nope. Okay. These are the best rainfall estimates from the National Hurricane Center. Okay, so we're looking at the red area, and there is a little bit of a pink in here. I'm not sure why that little circle will be there, but all right. So I'm stressing to you this. Okay, so there is a little bit of pink, and that may be adjusted, and it may become a bigger area as we get closer. The point is that that pink area is the potential for 15 to 20 inches of rainfall. The red area is 10 to 15 inches of rainfall, and then notice here, y'all. All right, so west of where the center is forecast to come in something like this, somewhere around that area. Anyway, the heaviest is going to be east of it, but notice even to the west, you have those orange areas, right? Because this is going to be a full-blown hurricane, and we'll still have that rain wrapping around the left side. You're going to have rain still. So even that orange area around the left side of circulation is going to be 6 to 10 inches of rainfall. It's a lot of rain. And then toward the yellow, that's what? Is that 4 to 6, I think? Yeah, 4 to 6 inches of rainfall. And then the greens are fine. That's 1 to 4. That's fine. But notice even stretching into Mississippi, Alabama Gulf Coast, and maybe even close to Florida there. You got 4 to 6 around Pensacola. You got 6 to 10 around Mobile and the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Regardless, rainfall will be falling along these areas. So that becomes a concern when we talk about flash flooding potential. That's something we're going to have to watch very closely as this thing moves in, okay? Got to watch that as this thing moves in. It's going to be one of the primary threats, I think, with this particular system. We're going to deal with the surge, we're going to deal with the wind, and then we're going to deal also, with that. This is a look from yesterday. What we're looking at as far as storm surge numbers. Again, this is a estimate. This is the best estimate right now. That I think this does assume it. It gives you, I think, the worst case at this point, assuming it may come in at high tide. But again, if this is a stronger hurricane, a bigger one, and the winds would be maybe higher, these might need to be adjusted up. But right now, the estimates east of just the center is going to be 7 to 11 feet above ground level. East of where the center comes in, close to the coast there, obviously. And then notice even on the east side of, the Louisiana coast by the Mississippi Gulf Coast there, where you have that right angle type of geography, 7 to 11 feet on that side too. And that's going to be probably on approach where you have that strong east wind pushing water toward the coast there. But even west of the center, the potential to see water rise in Vermilion Bay there, 4 to 7 feet, even along the coast. And that would probably happen actually more likely on approach when it's maybe like even down here where you have the center down here and the water would be pushing in that direction. That maybe it would push the bay a little bit higher. By the time the center gets closer to landfall, where maybe around here, then you'd have actually water pushing outward. So these numbers wouldn't all happen at landfall, probably different times, but these are the potentials to see throughout the entire ordeal, as far as the numbers go. So definitely nothing to play around with as far as storm surge potential goes. As far as the models go, we'll watch these a little bit as we go forward. Let me try and find what I had here. Yeah, that's not it. That's not it either. Where are they at? There they are. All right, so that's kind of the latest model suite. They're tightly packed, right, with a little bit of divergence there at the end, but you get the point. This is looking like a southeast Louisiana, south central, whatever you want to call it. Somewhere from here to here. Obviously the cone stretches a little bit, so somewhere along the Louisiana coastline we're gonna get a pretty significant hurricane landfall. Once this thing crosses over Cuba here, we're back into the Gulf later, and then this is just water, right? This is 24, this is 72, this is 48. So from it's gonna have a good at least 2 days, right? Once we get into water later, and then until we get into Sunday morning, it's gonna have just all water and the loop current. It's going to have warm water. It's going to have light wind shear, and I don't think dry air is going to be an issue either. If you look at this map, it kind of shows that, right? You can see those gold colors up there. There's some, but there's not really any starting right now, until we get into landfall. And this is that, you can see that spin in the Gulf. This is that little spin right here. That's that upper low we've been talking about that was causing a little bit of wind shear on the system, but at this point I think it's moved enough away from it. It's going to keep on moving in this direction, and it's not really causing shear. So now we're seeing this outflow from the storm here. You see a nice outflow in these directions from the storm. You're seeing expansion here toward the middle of the tropical system. You're seeing convection now popping around the center. The shear is lightening up. So at this point, starting right now until we get into landfall on Sunday, the only obstacle is going to be Cuba as it moves over the western side there. Again, it might just be a little bit of a speed bump. That side is not very mountainous. It's obviously going to be disrupted slightly. It remains to be seen how much and how much recovery time the storm's going to need as it gets back over the Gulf. But once it does, and once it gets its act back together, once it's back over the water, it's only going to be steady strengthening all the way to the coast. So that's the concern there, and that's why I tell y'all to prepare for a Category 4 hurricane. Make your plans as if a Category 4 was coming. That is not forecast right now by the National Hurricane Center. But me personally, I'm telling you, you probably should prepare for a Category 4, at least a Category 4 here at landfall. Remember, even if you have 120 at the coast, your gusts are going to be into Category 4 regardless. But I would say certainly right now you have to make preparations for it to be that strong. So let me see what type of questions. Let me go back up here and see what we got. And a lot of people are watching. This is kind of why I like to go through some of these questions on here and see if we have. How you doing, Gretchen? Thanks for joining. Let's see. How you doing, Ruth? Thanks for watching from coastal Alabama today. Good morning, Kayla, on here. Thank you, Sherry or Carly. Thank you for that. How you doing, Shelly from Abita Springs? Let me put back up the wind map for y'all to kind of look at if you missed that. Kind of gives an idea. Again, this will probably be adjusted. This is from Peyton Malone over at WWL. I like the graphics, so it kind of showed them some of the gust potential there. But as the storm increases in intensity and the track shifts slightly, these numbers would probably shift a little bit, but it gives you a general idea that if a storm comes in on that white line, obviously, about what type of wind gust you'd be looking at. But again, that might be adjusted upward if the storm is stronger, so keep that in mind. How you doing, Barbara from Slidell? Thanks, Ray. Yeah, got to take this one seriously, right? You got to take it seriously. Look, I'm hoping that what I'm seeing won't manifest itself into the Gulf of Mexico, but I think we got to prepare like it will, right? Because the last thing we want to do is give people a sense of comfort in this and say, this might be only a 1 or a 2 at landfall. I'm not going to do that, because then when you say that and people stay behind, they're like, oh man, this thing starts rapidly intensifying into a 4, at least a 4. It's too late at that point. So why would I do that? I think you got to make preparations. Look, these don't happen often. These types of strong storms, thankfully, they don't happen often, right? It's been a long time since we had something around this area. Now, last year we had Laura. That was southwest Louisiana. But this area, it's been a while since a storm with this potential of strength has approached the area. So I think we got to approach this with as much preparation, as much caution as we can, because it's only a day. It's going to make landfall on Sunday, but it has the potential to be a bad one here. All right, let's see here. Please don't relax too much, Cindy says. Yep, definitely. Susan says, watch from Baton Rouge. Current forecast looks like tropical storm sustained winds there. But remember, even with tropical storm sustained winds in Baton Rouge, you can have gusts. According to this map, this is probably pretty accurate. You could have gusts in that red area, maybe 80 to 90 miles per hour. Because remember, if you're dealing with a storm 120 to 130 near the coast, it's going to weaken, but it's not going to weaken immediately. You'll still have it inland and with some hurricane force winds up there. So I think there is the potential as it moves in. You could see hurricane force gusts in the Baton Rouge area. So keep that in mind there. Let's see. Fort Walton looks okay over there to the east. You'll have some rainfall. The water rise a little bit along the coast, but you're far enough away over in Fort Walton that nothing. I don't think anything life-threatening there. But again, there will be. I'm sure you'll feel it. There'll be some. There'll be some bands coming in with the storm, maybe even reaching that far to the east. And we'll have to see what the orientation is, but yeah, you'll certainly know that there's something happening west of you. Crystal, right now it's moving at the current speed of the Ida is it's moving at 15 right now. But my worry is that when it rounds, the west side of that high pressure closer to landfall, we're going to see a slowdown. It usually happens a lot. Think of about automobile vehicle making a turn, put on a blinker, slow down a little bit, make your turn. Well, that usually happens with these tropical systems too when they're about to make that turn around that high. Usually slows down a little bit. It looks like it could happen right at landfall, unfortunately. So something to watch for there. Not what we want to see. It's not going to stall, but it's not going to be speeding out of here either. And so that's where the rainfall total amounts come up and becomes a little bit concerning. It's tough around, let's see, Pineville, Alexandria. It's gonna be, so it should hook. It should be east or east of you. I mean, you could still see some tropical storm conditions over there in that area as it hooks off to the northeast. But I mean, I think you'd be okay in that area. You might have some rainfall, obviously around the western side. But if it stays on the current track, you'd be west of the system. So, I mean, it just depends. You might see some tropical storm conditions up in that direction, but I think if you're west of it and it takes the current track, I think you'd be all right because, again, it's hooking east, kind of away from you, as it moves in there. Thank you, Tanya. Appreciate the stars. Let's see. What is... Yeah, Pam, thanks for confirming that. Mobile had a lot of flooding and damage from Katrina. I thought they did, and that was far. That was pretty far from the center, right? I mean, yeah, it made a landfall closer to Gulfport, but it's not like Mobile was right on the center. I mean, it was a pretty decent distance away. So yeah, I thought I remembered that. Thanks, Janie. Appreciate that. Thanks for following. Dreama, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, says that she's in Denham Springs. A tree crushed my house in Katrina, and a tree crushed my house in Hurricane Gustav. Tornadoes are a major concern here. Yeah, I mean, obviously that's another risk involved. I think y'all know that by now. Coming into the rain bands, you can have those isolated tornadoes that pop down pretty quickly, and not only that, like I mentioned earlier, the saturation of the rain before it comes in, and the wind kind of the 1-2 punch, the rain first, and then the wind knocking things down because the ground is so mushy at that point. That becomes a little bit of a concern too. So I'm not, look, I don't lay these things out to scare the crap out of everyone. I'm just laying the hazards and the impacts that we could see around this area, and pray to God that it doesn't happen. But there is the real possibility that we do see widespread impact from this across this area. David said, we're evacuating here in Covington. I can't risk this. I got a bad feeling about this. I'm not supposed to be in a hurricane until after Cuba, but a hurricane before Cuba now. David, yeah, I think if you got the means to do it and you want to get out, you don't feel comfortable. I mean, just get out. Yeah, I mean, just go, right? It's a day, and if it's not as bad as you maybe thought it might be around that area, when you just come back and pick up some pieces and get back to life in a couple of days. Hopefully that will be the case, but this may not be. This may be something that takes weeks, right? Months, year. I mean, I don't want to say year, but you know how these storms are. I mean, sometimes these storms are so bad they take years to get back. So I'm not, you just hope for the best with this. That's all you can do. You have to prepare for it like it's going to be the worst thing you ever saw, and not regret it, and really hope that everything projections were wrong about this. I mean, what else can you really do, right? I'd hate to be the other way where you don't prepare at all, and it's like, oh crap, this thing is coming as a 4 or 5, and geez, why didn't we prepare at all? Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be in that camp. I'd much rather prepare for a 4 or a 5, and then you're like, oh, it's only gonna be a 2 or 3. Good. I don't know which way it's gonna go. I'm just saying. I think right now we need to prepare for at least a 4 here, right? That's just my way of thinking here. I don't Darren, I don't think you're going to see 120 mile per hour winds in Livingston. I think that's going to be far north enough that you won't see that type of wind. Hurricane force gust, I think, are going to be possible in that area as it hooks off to the east there, closer to your area. Impacts certainly for Gulfport, Michael. Yeah, I mean, a lot of rain, a lot of wind, storm surge there on the coast. As this thing hooks off in that direction, it's not going to be one that goes over there and hooks, in the other direction. It's going to be hooking toward you as well. So on the eastern side, with wide stretching impacts, yeah, you'll certainly feel it, and the possibility of power outages as well around that area. Yeah, Katie, what's it looking like for Monday? Just aftermath with the power outages. And basically, right? I mean, by Monday, it's going to be north of the area. Um, Let me zoom this out a little bit here. So, well, here's the issue. I mean, I didn't, yeah, I mentioned the slowdown, but this kind of illustrates what I'm talking about here. So, this is Sunday right here, 8 p.m., and then this is Monday at 8 a.m. So, notice the slowdown there at landfall. That is a concern to me, that we don't get this thing really speeding off until we get into Monday night into Tuesday and Wednesday. So, let me rephrase that. By Monday, it could still be right on Baton Rouge. Okay, so that point, let me go back to this one. This is 7 a.m. Monday. Okay, and it's right there. So yeah, I was thinking that maybe was 12 hours later, and that's my fault on that. This was 7. Oh, it is 12 hours later. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is 7 p.m. and this is 7 a.m. So it's not moving quickly. So that is 12 hours later. So you see where it goes in 12 hours. It's close to the coast on Sunday at 7 p.m. and it's just by Baton Rouge by 7 a.m. on Monday. So that is a concern when it comes to rainfall and wind and the power outage potential. So yeah, we could still be dealing with this around the area on Monday morning as well. So definitely keep that in mind. Again, not a fast moving not a fast moving system. Jessica, on this current track, if it would take where the center is right now, I do think Lake Charles would probably be far enough to the west. That's not to say you wouldn't feel some sort of impact still, but I think as far as life-threatening stuff, Lake Charles would be well far enough to evacuate if this track holds. Now, if this track shifts over more toward like Lafayette area down there, New Iberia, well then that's a different story. But if this track would hold, I think Lake Charles would be far enough. To be safe, maybe Beaumont would be a little bit better, just to kind of account for the possible margin for error that we could see here. So yeah, I hate recommending evacuations, Melissa. It's just not something I like to do. I mean, I think you need to get outside of the cone. Obviously, I would say is like I was just mentioning, Beaumont West or maybe Fort Walton East. Now, even those areas, I'm not saying you won't feel a thing. But I think life-threatening stuff, those areas east and west would be far enough that you'd be away from anything really bad. I wouldn't go north and east because of where the storm's going to be headed. If you're going to go north, I'd go north and west, right? Alexandria, that direction, because of the way it's going to be hooking in. So that's the best kind of I can, give to you as far as information on that. Sarah Pensacola is looking good. As far as direct impact, it does not mean you can't see some impact still. Storm surge, going to have some water push in that direction. You're going to have rain bands moving in. You're going to have a little bit of gusty winds sometimes embedded. You could have those tornadoes that come in along the rain bands. Those are pretty typical with tropical systems, but the brunt of it is going to be far enough away where, again, now, here's the thing to watch out for now. On the east side of these landfalling tropical systems, even that far east, Pensacola, Mobile, you can have those long training rain bands set up in that direction, and they're impossible to predict now, but you can have those training rain bands on the eastern side well away from the center that set up, and they just come south to north, and they stay in that one particular area and drop a lot of rain, and they cause some flash flooding issues. So that's not to say that can't be an issue. That would probably be the primary worry for me east of where this thing comes in, are those long rain bands, so keep that in mind. Let's see. Any prediction for wind speed and rainfall predictions for inland Mississippi? Ken says, the best I can give you is what the is what the National Hurricane Center says for rainfall. I have not seen wind predictions just yet, but I can give you rainfall, and I think rainfall honestly is the bigger concern when it comes to inland Mississippi. And so this, depending on where you are, this orange area here would be the potential for 6 to 10 inches of rain as it moves in that direction. The yellow around it would be 4 to 6 inches of rainfall. And of course, the reds and the pinks in here are going to be your most concerning totals. That's the pink area there is 15 to 20, and the red is 10 to 15 inches of rain. So that kind of maybe gives you an idea of what you're looking at there. All right, let's see. Eleni, is that how you say that? Will Lafayette area be bad? So it just depends on what your threshold for thinking something's bad, right? I mean, so Lafayette, if this track holds, I think you'd maybe see some tropical storm force winds on the western side there. You may see some rain bands wrapping around, but I think in total, I don't think you'll have any life-threatening stuff that happens on this current track. Now, any shift west, of course, you're technically still in the cone, I believe. So yeah, I mean, you're in the cone. So I mean, like, this could still shift in that direction, but currently, I don't think it would be too bad. Maybe some power outages too. You can never rule that out with these landfalling tropical systems. So something to keep in mind here. KD Cat. Sorry, just tuning in, but just to clarify, I think this will be a fast-moving system. It's not going to be a fast-moving system. It's not going to stall like a Harvey, but it is going to slow down at landfall as it turns around that high pressure. So that becomes a concern. That the slowdown happens right at landfall. That's gonna increase the impact there toward the coast. More winds, more water push, and then the rainfall totals are going to add up as well. Because of that. So it's certainly not going to be a fast-moving system. No problem, Roger. Thank you for watching and following the page. Lauren says NHS is make a major shift. It depends on what major shift means to you. Are we going to go outside of the cone here? I don't think we're going to go outside of the cone. Now, keep in mind, anything inside of the cone is really not even considered a major shift. That is the margin for error here. And so, you can have a landfall over here instead. You can have a landfall over here instead. That's what the cone accounts for. There is margin for error on each side of this thing. So the center is right now just the center of the cone. But remember, trends in the last 24 hours have been to the west a little bit. Does that continue? I don't know. Maybe, but we just need to see what happens. I still think we need to wait till this thing gets back into over Cuba. Let's see how much that disrupts things, and see if there's any kind of center relocation that happens. And I think if we're going to see any major shift happen with this thing, it's going to happen then, when it comes over Cuba and back into the Gulf. I think once we get over Cuba, back into the Gulf, and this thing starts consolidating again, then we're going to know everything we need to know. The models are going to be pretty much locked in. We can still see minor shifts back and forth toward the end, those wobbles that you see. But I think at that point, we're going to know a lot more. That's going to be tomorrow. And then everybody can kind of make a decision at that point. But again, like I said early on, I think we need to prepare for this to be a, for a category 4 minimum here is what the preparations should be for here. Yeah, Lex. It looks like the West Bank still. I mean, obviously you're going to be. Yeah, you're going to be in the western side. I mean, the western side of the center, the eastern side of the center. I'm sorry. And as that moves in, there'll be some pretty significant impacts there as well. If this track holds, there'll be some pretty significant impacts in the New Orleans metro area, and all areas east of where that center comes in. Right there, will have some decent impacts. I think you're looking good over there in Orange, Texas, Erica. I really do. We'd have to see a very significant shift to have any significant worry over there in that direction. So I think you're doing okay over there. I think right now this is looking like the scenario makes sense. It's just riding along that high basically, and it's going to be a matter of there's some margin of error how strong that high will be, how fast the storm's moving. Obviously, if it's a faster moving storm, it's going to ride along that high before it has a chance to build in, so it'll probably go more east. If it's a slower moving system, sometimes going over land like Cuba can slow things down, and that can, I think, if things slow down, then that will shift the track west. It's really a speed thing right now too, because the high is building west, and so the longer the storm takes to get to here, the high would be able to build in a little bit more and push the storm a little bit more to the west. If it goes a little bit faster, then the storm will either go on the current track or shift a little bit to the east. So the speed of the storm is going to be important here moving forward. The short-term speed as it goes over Cuba and gets back to the Gulf, it's something to keep an eye on, and what's the forward motion going to look like. So in case you're tuning in late here, just talking about landfall timing there, you're looking at that category, that little 3 right there near the coast. That is 7 p.m. on Sunday. The yellow after that is 7 a.m. on Monday, so it doesn't move much in 12 hours. But again, give or take a few hours for that landfall. I would say prepare for a landfall for Sunday afternoon. And if it's a little bit later, it's a little bit later. But I would say prepare for an early landfall there on Sunday afternoon. But again, it could be the evening instead. But remember, impacts will start to be felt earlier than when this thing makes landfall. Okay, so it's not gonna just right when it gets to the coast is when you're gonna feel things. No, it's gonna start a little bit earlier than that. So that's the latest on Ida this morning. I'm really not liking what I'm seeing on satellite currently. It's kind of that stage, before sometimes these hurricanes, you can kind of tell when they're starting to get their act together. But what I see now is this center and these storms. You can see those cloud tops showing up around this area. And that you can see, you're really starting to see the visible center. It's right there, and it's moving in this direction. But you're really starting to see those enhanced cloud tops and those stronger thunderstorms showing up on the visible satellite picture, and that tells us that there's some pretty strong storms there toward the center of circulation. This really just confirms that. You see all this white and pink area in there. Those are those storms close to the center right there. So this thing is consolidating nicely there before Cuba. And so I told y'all earlier in the page, I thought this thing, it's just going to make a run at hurricane, I think, before it gets to Cuba at this point. And we'll see what Cuba does to it later and see what kind of disruption it can cause. So that's the latest here on Ida. I'll continue to keep y'all posted in the page and go live, obviously, a few more times. Now, if I end up leaving, going somewhere, that'll probably be tomorrow at some point. I'm not sure. I'm going to try and take things with me, so I'll be able to do some of these live updates still. I'll see how the logistics are in that and what I can do with that. So I'll keep y'all posted, though. I don't know if I'll be able to do live videos late in the weekend, but we'll see. So stay with the page. I'll continue to update y'all. Thank you for following. Tag your friends. Share this video if you'd like. And visit the sponsor website and Facebook page. Give them a like. Paul Davis, Restoration of Baton Rouge. Thank them for partnering with the page. And thank you guys for sending stars and becoming supporters. Really appreciate y'all. So stay with the page. I'll keep y'all posted for the new model runs, new advisories coming out for the rest of the day. And be ready for this thing to be upgraded, I think, to a hurricane before it gets to Cuba. All right, y'all. Have a good rest of the day. And